So I'm going to talk about toys. So that was a great quote that led on. So I'm going to talk about toys, which are clearly a really important invention. And I'll just let you do that for a second. So Makie Lab is based in London. My background is in gaming. I'm a giant nerd and have kind of spent most of my life working on digital products and games. And 4 years ago, I was here for Digital Kids, which I've literally just come from. And it's a kind of virtual worlds and digital, things for kids conference that is co-located with the US Toy Fair, the biggest toy fair in the Western Hemisphere, pretty much. And I was downstairs in the basement listening to people talk about things like Club Penguin. And it was in a little room, and then there was a massive concrete wall and like a load of steps and stuff. And then over there was the toy fair. Even though they're co-located, there was no connection between the two. And as I was looking at all these avatars on screen, I thought, I wonder if you can turn an avatar into a doll or a robot into a robot using 3D printing. Went and ran around the toy fair, saw no evidence of 3D printing, actually no evidence of anything digital at all. One mention of Facebook, 2 mentions of Twitter. This is in 2010. I was like, holy moly, this is weird. So I went home and thought about it, and then did some sketches and some prototypes, and kind of on it went. 2010, when did this happen? Somebody gave me the book, The Real Toy Story, and actually Matt Webb from Berg, and it's an amazing book, and it tells you the whole history of the US, the British, the German toy manufacturing, and the kind of wholesale move to the Far East. And at the same time, Cory Doctorow wrote Makers, and in the post, in the mail, a couple of weeks later, this turned up, and it was a SLS 3D printed thing, and this guy, a fan had hand modeled the front of the book, had it 3D printed and stuck it in the post, and Cory opened it, and I immediately tried to start assembling it, and he shouted at me. And at the time, this is one of my World of Warcraft guilds. I don't play anymore, but that's me at the front with no clothes on. And one of the things that was happening, that we were having a party, and there was stuff going on. We just had a dinner party, and then somebody said, "Let's go skinny dipping," as you do. And what was happening at the time was figure prints. So Ed Fry's, the guy who basically started Xbox, left and went, "I'm going to 3D print World of Warcraft figures," and brilliant, right? And I still want one. I totally wanted one. They were really expensive and quite small, and not a toy, but you could see it was a trophy of the game that you'd been playing. And as a gamer, this appealed to me a lot. And so I'd had this idea about avatars to dolls, and thought maybe that would be a good place to start some research. Dolls are the biggest toy in the categorization of toys. They're the kind of the biggest category and the most lucrative, and then secondary to that is construction, and on it goes. And this is what a toy store generally looks like, especially if you go to the girls' floor or the girls' aisle. Hopefully they're getting rid of this girls versus boys thing, but generally it looks like this. And I've started with things I learned to number 2. Number 1's coming last. But I didn't know anything about the toy industry, went off to go and learn about it. One of the first things I found out was part of toy retail is real estate. So the reason that toys all look the same, they're all this height, because that's the height between the shelves. That's why Barbie is that high. They're all pretty much identical because it's an incredibly expensive business to get into, and nobody wants to risk the money. So they don't really try to change stuff much. And so you have this kind of homogeneity. And then not least, there are basically no startups in the space generally, because if you want to put your product next to those products, you have to bid against the manufacturer who's putting their products there. Like I said, it's a kind of real estate business in many cases. So if you want to put your product next to Mattel or Disney or whoever, you have to pay the same or more than Mattel and Disney are willing to pay, which obviously in startup land doesn't happen very much. The other thing I looked at was customization, and this is American Girl, which I think you will all be familiar with. Nobody in Europe knows about American Girl, and everyone's like, what? $110 for a doll, that's crazy. But in America, everyone's like, sure, 800 million a year, no problem. It's something like 40% of Mattel's profit growth. It's just huge for them. And we looked at that, and the way they do customization is the brute force way. So they have 40 dolls. Each one of those needs to be molded. Each mold costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, a proper professional grade. And basically, they're the same doll with just a little variation. So if you have curly hair and brown eyes, you've kind of got 3 to choose from. You go in, you choose your doll, you go and choose a whole load of very clean-cut things, and you walk out having spent $400. So we looked at all that and went, well, what happens if you 3D print it, make it locally, each one completely customized and on demand instead of not on demand, not customized and made far away? Does that work? Looked at the business model, realized there was absolutely no money in it whatsoever, because 3D printing, certainly at professional grade, is still really, really expensive. But going back to the games idea, we were like, okay, virtual goods from physical goods. We will build a game and we will build a toy, and we'll have this dual revenue stream. So then, so that's what we do. There's the files that we make the avatars, the files go to the 3D printers, and they make dolls. I went out to raise money, so I spent a long time. I spend basically half of every year raising money. That's the job of a CEO of a startup. It's not fun. The other half is more fun, but anyway, that's what you do. So you go out and you raise money, and where was I? Sorry, there's the jet lag. That's right. The reason you see the physical stuff right now is because basically I got a lot of. We understand games. We think you can build games. We've seen games being built before, and we've never seen 3D printed toys. How does this work? So we had to go out and prove the hardware, which we have now done. So the way it works is you buy direct through us, but we are also in retail. It's the kind of definition of toy with a capital T. It went through toy safety testing, which you will have to do if you want to make a 3D printed product that goes to kids. You do have to go through that consumer toy safety testing. There are third parties to do that, and that's quite straightforward. And then how do you sell a product on demand, especially through traditional retail channels? And I'm going to tell you that we are learning that with our partner in London, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. So the dolls are printed in London and Amsterdam, hand assembled. We make clothes. These are that's our fashion designer and our brand designer and 2D artist and UI artist and doll makeup specialist all in one. There's a lot of multitasking going on in the company. The other thing that we have learned is hardware is hard. You'll hear this a lot. It's really hard. Atoms are hard. I mean, pixels, bits are easy. Something goes wrong, you just fix it. You just overwrite it. When atoms go wrong, they go hilariously wrong, and you won't know why. They just do. Although, brilliantly, somebody might like it. So the other great thing about producing stuff on demand with a printer is that there's always somebody out there who goes, actually, I'll have that. We have zombie green dolls. It was supposed to be mid-brown. They came out green. We thought, oh well, left it up there. And some people buy green dolls. I don't know why. So what happened was, after we raised some money, we built a demo and put it live within 6 months. It was completely broken and horrible. The dolls were bone white. They were 99 pounds. They weren't toy safe. It was grim. It was that classic thing of if you've what does Reid Hoffman say? If you've launched something, you've launched too late. It's that. If you're not excruciatingly embarrassed, you've launched too late. And we were excruciatingly embarrassed, but went live and made some sales, and people turned up and started saying, hey, how about you do this? So these guys turned up and made Movember moustaches. We were like, we don't know how to do skin color. So they, our early adopters, and us, we started boiling the nylon parts in all sorts of stuff, ink, tea, coffee, blueberries. All of it worked, which was great. PG Tips produces Caucasian. We ended up using, it does. We use standard industrial dye now, but you can just, do that at home in a pan. So we make clothes and we put the patterns up straight away, and then our early adopters came along and said, actually tweak this, do that. Oh, and by the way, you can make adult sized as well, and then they share stuff, which is brilliant. Went through toy safety testing. That took a couple of months and cost a bit of money, but it can be done. So the basic materials in 3D printing, the nylon in the powder, the ABS, the PLA, they're all good. As long as you don't make a shape that you can turn into a stabby object, you're pretty much safe. If you're worried, just smash it on the floor and see what happens. The doll's bounced. Hooray! And then the real kind of that customization started to emerge from our users. So we were just delighted to see characters like this turn up. This lady, who now works for us, we hired her because she's so brilliant. She was making doll furniture out of IKEA cutlery drawers. That's what that is behind, you can see there. This was a doll bought by a collector, and then she did this face and sent it back to us and said, this is what happens when you do professional doll face-ups. And so we went, oh, thank you very much, and she taught us how to do it. Then we got a few phone calls from all sorts of types, including the Prime Minister. We had to make a doll for that. Them, I should say, sorry, Cameron. And we had designed the dolls initially to have a head the size of a lily pad Arduino, because the point about Makies is not only that you make your own doll, but you should be able to hack it as well. Since then, the heads have got a tiny bit smaller, and actually the hole in the neck to go to the battery compartment was slightly weakening in the neck, but also everything shrank. So in fact, you don't need the battery compartment anymore, because watch battery plus nano plus everything else can all still fit into the head. This is some Nekamimi ears that one of our users turned up. She wanted a doll with cat ears that would swivel when she walked into the room. So she made it. And we were like, that is just the best. Retail is really hard, margins. So absolutely right, most retailers want 50%. But one of the things that they're discovering right now is that, in fact, people come into a store and will use it as a showroom, and then they're Amazon and off they've gone. If you can design something that's customizable and can be customized on the spot, in fact, what happens is, especially if there's an iPad involved or a tablet of some description, kids come rushing in, sit down, start making stuff, and the parents are kind of sitting there for anything up to 2 hours, I've been told, at which point the sales assistant sweeps and collars them. Retailers like this. We're A/B testing physical stuff, so we're treating everything like software, which is sort of, well, it's doable. So what happens is we take an idea for a kit or something, make 5 of them, stick one in our own shop, stick the other in Selfridges, which is the picture I just showed you. It's a big department store on Oxford Street in London. And if something sells, then we go and make more. And that's how we're ramping up, figuring out what people want, kind of A, asking them, but just B, just making stuff in really small quantities and as fast as possible. We've got the game team shipping on a weekly basis, and the things team is now pretty much shipping on a 2-weekly basis. But that has taken 2 years to get to that point. The other great thing about on-demand and 3D printed is, like, you can change stuff very, very quickly. So whether that's a customer saying, I want ray guns, okay, we'll model ray guns, and then they're in the shop. And then they're only printed if somebody buys it. Equally, we got asked to make some celeb dolls, and they were like, can you make, this is Jessie J, and we did it in 2 weeks, which ordinarily it would take a year to make a celebrity doll. And that's literally because you could take the basic model, tweak it just enough to look like her, and there it is. So that ongoing process of never being stuck with a warehouse full of goods, or never being stuck with, you know, a mold that cost you £100,000 that you're never going to use again, that's amazingly powerful. We gave the doll to Jessie, and obviously she Instagrammed it, and that was really nice for us. Thank you very much. So finally, the game is about to go live. It's very quietly live in Singapore at the moment. When you do a free-to-play game, generally you want to launch it quite quietly, probably in an English-speaking country. The trend at the moment is to launch in Singapore, to see English speakers behaving kind of like Japan and Korea. And then you launch in New Zealand, and they behave exactly like Brits and some Americans. And then you launch in Canada and the US, but only when you've done your experiments on these poor folks in Singapore and New Zealand. That's what we're doing right now. In the game, it's a workshop, and so you grow materials like cotton to make cloth. You then use your cloth to do prints and drawings and stuff on to make clothes, and then you stick the clothes on your doll. So in that sense, it's a dress-up game, except it kind of works through how things are made. But the everything in the game will be printable as a toy. The avatar turns into a doll, the little machines turn into little objects, and the cloth itself we're going to be printing onto real cloth and sending out as cloth kits. So the kids will be making literally everything around their toy. Games are really hard. Everything is hard. Everyone's like, oh, you want to be Supercell. You want to make 800 million, 800,000 a day. Games take a long time. Christian Segerstrale said you need about $1 million, 8 to 12 people, and a year to do a basic free-to-play game at the moment. So that's what you will need if you're thinking of doing that. But it's a pretty understood model. It's a very, very busy marketplace right now. Really super, super busy and super high expectations because of the amazing things that Supercell have done. But so you know, if you're coming in, you're up against them and Angry Birds, etc. And you'll notice that the top 10 in the iStore just isn't cycling out very much, and that's because of the power that they have to buy all the advertising that can keep them there. So you're going to need something that will make you stand out. Just a little tip. One of the things about virtual goods is obviously you can tie stuff to achievements. That goes right back to that thing at the beginning with World of Warcraft, where you start to think about, okay, I've done something in a game, now I can print out that thing, and then I can level it up. And leveling up physical objects is something that we haven't really seen yet, but it's coming. I'm going to skip that one. The thing that I've learned most is don't, from a CEO's point of view, you're running around a lot outside of the business and doing a lot of money raising, but team is obviously absolutely number one. You want them happy, and you want them to be working really, really well together. We're completely agile now. If there's one thing I've learned, really, I would say that if there's somebody or something that isn't quite working, tackle it early, not late. Don't hope to kind of change a person. A team's like just a thing of magic. And when they all start to get on with each other and make things, this is Ben Burry, who had grown his moustache and never got rid of it, and he's taken a job abroad, so everyone wore moustaches for the day to say goodbye to him, and it's a thing of beauty when you see that come together. So look after your team. Don't allow anything to fester. I think that would be the number one thing for any startup, because that is really, really tough. So that's us. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you very much. That's awesome. It's actually, yeah, by the way, as a VC, that's definitely a trend we're seeing towards, family tech, if you want, for lack of better words, whether that's toys or whether that's products for babies or kids. And it's interesting, it's like this corner of the world that hasn't seen any innovation in the last 20 years, 25 years, and suddenly there's like this wave of great entrepreneurs looking at the space.
The toy industry is slightly in shock, to be honest. They were just all talking about it. They were saying the themes are tech, miniaturization, tablets. They're like tablets have just taken over everything, and we literally don't know what to do about it, because the time spent on tablets used to be the time playing with physical toys. So yeah, it's a huge theme, and it's an enormous industry. All kind of going,
Questions? Yep.
Hi, my name is Andre. What's the price of one of the toys?
Of the dolls, they're kind of the same as American Girls. So we sell in pounds. They're £69, which, depending on the exchange rate, is about $110. I think because of the size and the sort of premium thing, it'll probably stay there. 3D printing is volume based, so if you were to do a toy that big, it would be more like 15, 20. So that's a tip. Start small.
Thank you.
Alex, Metamorphic Ventures. You guys are doing dolls right now. Do you have any plans to go into other kinds of toys? Or
yeah,
like
totally.
Not that we want one as boys.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant. We started with girls because they're massively underserved and everyone's doing robots. So we were like, well, we're not going to do that. Plus, dolls are the big one. But the software is shape agnostic. So not only is the software shape agnostic, but the manufacturing system is shape agnostic. The machine's in there. Every single print that you send can have a different collection of objects in it. So, a doll is a robot, is a dinosaur. And then, like, if you decide you want wheels, you just print wheels. So it's completely flexible like that. That's why that's a massive advantage to using 3D printing, again, over molds, because otherwise, if you wanted to change your thing from a doll to a robot, you'd have to remold everything. Whereas in our case, you morph it.
How far do you think we are from mass production through 3D printing?
No, I mean, not far at all. So we're already selling to quote unquote the mainstream. Obviously, we're not selling in hundreds of thousands or anything yet, but you can use the network as a distributed manufacturing network. I don't know what the number of things is that will be the test point that says, actually this is beginning to be hard. The 3D Hubs guys, I mean, they're, seeing what they're doing, that's just brilliant. But it's the on-demand bit that's more interesting. Like, how much are people prepared to wait? How much are they prepared to value customization? That kind of stuff. And there's not much data out there on that. So to be honest, like, you might find out that a kid is prepared to wait 2 weeks for, I don't know, a toy, and only a week for something else, but 4 weeks for that pair of trainers or whatever it is. So yeah, this is a whole area of data that is basically growing.
Very interesting. All right, that's all the time we have. You're going to be around after this, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.